So we know Google is going to be doing some sort of press conference or just a presentation at GDC. That's set for March 19th. So it's not this coming week, it's the following week. I believe that's a Tuesday, I think. But the people that they invited was pretty much the media and the press from the gaming side. So it does appear that Google is set to reveal their plans to enter gaming in some way, and from what we've been hearing, it sounds like they are going to be showing up with at least a streaming service, and now we're starting to see controllers get thrown around here because it does look like they're going to show up with some sort of hardware. Now, we've talked about this before, that there was some sort of project going on internally that had to do with hardware like a console, for example, and today we're going to talk about all of the rumors and just information that I've been able to gather with the help of Liam Robertson here, and it's quite a bit of stuff. So we're going to talk about a few things, including the hardware, and we're going to talk about how Google is going to attempt to enter the gaming market, because as we've talked about before, if you're going to show up and compete with the big boys, right, Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft, you got to have games. Well, we at least know a few companies that they appear to be partnering with and working to fund projects. And you may already kind of think of one, but there might be one that it could surprise you a little bit, maybe. So we're going to talk about all of that here. First, this is the controller patent that people spotted today, and it is from Google LLC, and this appears to be the controller that they're going to have people use when it comes to their console or their streaming service. I assume it's something that will sync up to most of their devices that are out there, and it's going to pretty much let you play the games they have set up. So it's a pretty straightforward patent that describes the controller, the buttons. It looks like it has a little microphone button, so I guess you could press it and say, hey, Google, do this or launch this. And because we don't really have an overall look at the controller in what it could look like, people decided to do renders to give us a better idea. Now, this is from Yanko Design, and this is kind of a render that was created to give us an idea as to what we could see from this controller. Now, I do have an opinion on this controller. I don't think it looks super comfortable, to be honest. I've looked at it and I said, I don't know about that. Now, I have not held it or anything or used it, but just the way it looks, I don't know. It just doesn't look like it would be super comfortable, although the control sticks look okay. The button placement looks to just be colors, red, yellow, blue, green. And again, this is a render, so there could be, A, B, X, Y, and all of that. They could use shapes. From there, though, it's hard to say how comfortable this is going to be. It's going to come down to its weight. I don't want it to be super light and flimsy. But again, this is kind of a mock-up and a rendering and an idea as to what it could be. So we'll see what they're going to come up with here at their GDC presentation, which is most likely where it's going to happen. Now, I want to start with a screenshot that's taken from, I guess, a development kit of one of their consoles, which most likely is the console they're probably going to launch either with the streaming service or after the streaming service, because there is word and rumor that they're going to have a full-on piece of hardware like an Xbox One or a PlayStation 4 to go alongside the streaming service. So it sounds like they are entering the console market like straight up, like running straight into it. And this appears to be what was sent over to me, part of the settings. So of course, when you go through their dashboard and everything, you go to settings and you can just see basically all the options here. I assume the backgrounds are changeable, the color scheme and everything, but it looks like a very simple and straightforward design, which makes me hope that there is a snappy interface and it's not really slow. Like the Xbox One, for example, is fairly slow and it can be kind of annoying at times. The PlayStation has that issue as well, and the Switch is pretty quick, but it also does run into issues with not having much there in terms of feature sets. You can't even change the background. So I'm hoping this makes it very snappy. You can see their storage and everything. So we'll see if it has like a built-in hard drive or SD card reader, or how they're going to get around all that and do that. So let me go ahead and leave up the images here, and we're going to go over all of the points that I've gathered and touch on them, and just kind of talk a bit about what we can expect from Google going into this this presentation, because I feel like we're going to see a lot here. I was trying to figure out if we would see just the streaming service at GDC, but to invite all of these gaming outlets, it feels like they might show up with their console. So let's start with the idea here. Google's games project is going to be part streaming and part console. That much has been rumored, and that's part of the information that we've gathered. So they're going to have basically two pillars here. Streaming, which would let it work on any computer, cell phones maybe, anything with Android even, and that way you can just start it up and play. We might even see it built into things like smart TVs, at one point. And then the console would be something that would be put into stores and other places, probably even buy it off of like the Play Store on your phone, how we've seen like the Pixel, for example, do that, where you can buy it and they'll ship it to you. So it looks like they'll have some kind of console. We don't really know what it looks like yet, but that appears to be something that's been worked on. We've talked about Metallurgy as the name of the hardware project. And the streaming service will have a subscription model and feature its own exclusive games. That's the most important thing. They're not going to show up with something. They're not going to show up with something and not give you a reason to buy into it or become a subscriber to it. It looks like they are going to have their own exclusive games which are going to be using, some of them using known IPs. Like, you might be surprised, apparently, with some of the stuff that shows up on Google in their streaming service and their hardware, and some of it's going to be funded straight up by Google themselves. Like, they're just going to fund the project and say, hey, we have this game, and if you want to play it, you got to either get our hardware or subscribe to our streaming service. Now, the development kits are apparently named Metallurgy Forge, so that's just the development units. Like, we just saw a screenshot from a dev kit, and that appears to be they're dubbed. Again, dev kits don't really need a serious name since it usually stays internal. And at the time, it was planned to be a fully digital console with no physical media, as in you don't go to the store and buy a disc and to pop it in your system, because we are on the back end of that right now, where a lot of people are going digital. The problem is developers, they're still concerned about if a digital-only platform would work. We're still kind of in that weird middle ground right now where we're a bit concerned about something coming out and being all digital, despite the market going towards that. People still want representation on store shelves because there are a lot of people who still shop for physical media. That's why places like limited run games exist, because people still like the physical media to have for their shelves. So I'm going to be interested to see if it is all digital or if they do have these games show up on store shelves despite us going towards that digital age right now. The interesting thing about what they want to provide developers. So if you're developing a game for their platform and you want to develop it for like Metallurgy, the hardware, right? So you want to make it for the console. The idea that Google is coming up with here is if you create a game for their hardware, their local hardware, you don't have to mess around with it too much so that it works with the streaming platform as well. This is rumors according to Google. They want to make it as easy as possible. So if you develop for their platform, it will also just translate over very easily to the streaming platform. So if you develop for the hardware, it will also be available on their streaming service very easily. Like, it'll basically move over. I'm curious how they would do that, if maybe just like we know Microsoft has a lot of their streaming platforms are basically Xboxes stored at their data centers. So I wonder if Google does something similar with their hardware and they basically just set up their servers to run it that way. It's possible. It could be interesting. And they believe that the streaming service could launch before the hardware, which I don't doubt, considering we've already used Project Stream with Assassin's Creed, for example. Like, I've used it. So I don't doubt that. It didn't seem too bad when I used it, so it was almost felt like it was like ready, right, for mainstream use. Now, they did originally plan to have the console and hardware within, like, actually to announce it within the first half of 2019. And if they do that at GDC, they'll be within their plans on that. Otherwise, I was thinking if it could be E3, but GDC seems like it makes a lot more sense for Google, as they generally have had larger announcements there. And that would make sense. So getting into more of the hardware. In March 2018, so about a year ago, they had plans for 2 console models, not just one. And it was kind of the setup we had with like the Xbox, just as an example. For example, here, one was codenamed Steel. It's a lower spec and a lower cost. So if you put out a system that is, of course, cheaper, it's easier to attain. And then the other one is named Titanium. Steel just kind of works into like the metalworks, metallurgy and everything. That one will be the higher spec premium version. So think of the Xbox One versus the Xbox One X, or the PS4 versus the PlayStation 4 Pro. But Google is considering launching with only one model and dropping Steel, mostly due to hardware production costs for the higher spec model getting lower. Like, we've seen the PlayStation 4 Pro and the Xbox One X go on sale quite a few times. So maybe if they can get this thing to $300 to $400, they might just forego the Steel console completely and just go with Titanium, just because it's less confusing, right, for the market. If they can get it to, I think if they can get it to $350 to $400, they would be okay, and they could release it without too much issue. Now, let me talk to you a bit about the hardware here. The Titanium dev kit is faster than the Xbox One X, so keep that in mind. That's pretty serious. At that point, if they can drop it at $400 and it's faster than the Xbox One X, okay, well then you have a compelling system on your hands there. It contains a low-powered ARM-based segment called Snowcone, which is independent from the x86-based Avalanche. So we have Snowcone and Avalanche. I guess that makes sense. Snowcone is used to manage the system UI, sleep mode, and simple apps, while Avalanche is used for games. So it would have a sleep mode, and that's not new. We've seen other devices use like ARM chipsets to power the system while it's asleep. I think the Wii or the Wii U did that. Other devices use that as well. So that's not like brand new or anything, and makes a lot of sense. And here we go with the developers and companies. So I told you guys before, if Google's going to make a run at this, they need to have companies at least lined up to make games or are already making games. And some of them are already making games, and they might even be ready to show them in a few weeks at GDC. So one of them I think is pretty obvious. You may have already guessed it. It's Ubisoft, right? They did it with Assassin's Creed, and that seemed to go over pretty well. Ubisoft has also been very vocal about wanting to do the streaming services, so I don't think that's a shocker, right? And if they would provide their games, whether it's The Division 2 as an example, or any of the other stuff they're working on now, I'm sure there's going to be a Watch Dogs, for example, this year, and it shows up there, then that's some third-party support that would be from a company that does really well in sales, and Ubisoft would, of course, get their streaming stuff going, and I think they'd really like that. The other company that might surprise some people, and it also might get some people excited because we just talked about Google looking to do some revivals, right? Maybe some remakes, maybe some new entries in older series. That's Sega. So Sega is rumored to actually be a major partner with Google, not like a little one, like a major one, which would tell me that they're either working on some bigger games or several smaller games to debut with the console. That's actually pretty interesting to hear about. Sega has a vast library of older IPs that could be revived, could get remakes, and it would get people pretty excited to jump on board with what Google is doing. Now, Sega, of course, has done stuff with their Sega Ages collection, right? So they do pull from their older series a lot, and honestly, there's some cool stuff that they could put on this Google platform to get people interested in it. I mean, you could probably think of a bunch of stuff right now, and let me know what you would like to see down in the comments when it comes to this. But having Sega and Ubisoft as two bigger companies that can show up and help to bolster your lineup, along with Google's own stuff that they are working on, that could be very, very compelling. So let me know what you guys think about all of these rumors around Google's platform. I wanted to get this stuff out there now since we are rolling into GDC, and it seems like more and more talk is happening, just to get the conversation going about what appears to be Google jumping into the console market, along with just streaming. Now, keep this in mind, back when the original Xbox showed up, people made fun of Microsoft because they weren't really known as a game console company alongside Nintendo and Sony. But where they are now, it's a bit more interesting because they have some bigger franchises. They have a wealth of first-party studios that they've now purchased. And for a lot of people, the Xbox 360 is their favorite console. So Microsoft grew pretty quick, and here's Google now, maybe trying to do the same thing. Who knows? Maybe in a couple generations, we'll be looking back on this moment and say, wow, remember when Google showed up and everyone laughed? You never know. Let me know what you guys think down below, though. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.